Yeah, hey. Tobago updates.
Welcome to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates, your source for current affairs in Tobago, Trinidad, and the region. With the perfect conversations to complement your morning routine, I am Kandace Jackson, and let's get started with the news in 90 seconds. Political leader of the PDP, Watson Duke, expressed his desire to be Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly. Speaking at a recent television interview, Duke said he is disappointed with the current leadership of the THA and apologized to Tobagonians. Following the departure of Chief Secretary Fali Augustine and others from the PDP and the formation of a new party, Duke remains steadfast in his goal to lead the THA. Meanwhile, Duke hopes to become the mayor of Port of Spain in the upcoming local government elections. In some other news, the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development is exploring using cold asphalt for minor repairs on the island's roads. Cold mix asphalt is a combination of emulsified asphalt, aggregate, and water, which is pre-packaged and does not require heavy equipment to apply. It can last up to a year as a temporary fix for minor problem areas. If the cold mix asphalt repairs are successful, the division will invest in additional material for small-scale repairs. And finally, although the state appealed a high court ruling in which the judge chastised the police for the abduction of firearms dealer Brent Thomas in Barbados, former UNC Minister Dr. Tim Gopi Singh has urged the Prime Minister to take ownership of the incident. At a press conference yesterday, Gopi Singh called on Dr. Rowley to rectify the situation instead of running away from TNT at such a critical state of the country's management. Dr. Rowley is currently on vacation in Barbados. Gopi Singh said that if Rowley cannot handle his duties, he should do the honorable thing and call for early elections. And that was your news in 90 seconds. Well, viewers, like I said, there's a lot of things happening in the news. And one of the things that has been capturing our attention is what's been happening at the Park Quarry, where, at this point in time, they do not have a mining license and they do not have the blasting permits necessary for them to continue their operations. Now, the Minister of Mr. Stuart Young recently said that, an audit is necessary and an audit is currently happening to determine if royalties should be paid to the government of Trinidad and Tobago based on, what has been done, the income and the revenue generated by the Study Park Enterprises Limited over the past few years. And this is certainly something that we have not really heard of in our situation. We had the Secretary of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development, Trevor James, on last Friday, where he said that, this is an encroachment on the THA, and the government has no right to demand royalties from the quarry because of the fact that all lands are vested within the THA and all taxes should be paid to the THA as is written in the law. So to give us another perspective on what's been happening and this whole situation, we have political activist Mr. Anthony James on with us this morning. Good morning and welcome to you, sir. How are you doing?
Not too bad, Kandace. Very pleasant morning to you and very pleasant morning to all of Tobago and all who are listening. And thanks for having me.
Such a pleasure to have you on. Now, let's get straight into it. We know what's been happening, what both parties are saying in regards to the Study Park Quarry. I want to know, first of all, from you, do you think that royalties should be paid or an audit should be happening to determine if royalties should be paid to the government of Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, that aspect of the response or the statement from the Ministry of Energies and Industries Limited, or as the case may be, Energy Industries Limited, that aspect of the statement I find quite worrying, and it should worry all Tobagonians because that language comes across as though the people of Tobago are subjects, subjects to a colonial power and so on, and that we are not really the owners of Tobago. We are not a sovereign people, but political science teaches that the people in any country are sovereign, and the people of Tobago are sovereign. We are sovereign in our own story, and we are sovereign in our own land. Tobago is our land, and it is the only land we can legitimately claim to be ours. We can't claim Trinidad, because we didn't build the cabin there, and we didn't plant the corn there, we didn't labor there, we didn't slave there. So Tobago really is our land. And so that the minister's language there is troubling. But I want to preface what I'm going to say this morning by saying that 134 years ago, everything political or institutional for the citizenry of Tobago began in Tobago and ended in Tobago. It didn't go to Trinidad, Barbados. It did not even go to England, because the truth be told, Tobago was considered to be a colony, while Trinidad was considered to be crown colony. The meaning of that is that the colony that is considered to be just colony was basically independent in its operations. And the crown colony is a colony who had to account to the colonial power, which was Britain, the king or the queen. So Tobago was free. It's just very, very funny and interesting that 134 years on, the citizenry of Tobago must depend on Trinidad. But that is not completely true. I say that to say that some advancement or evolution has taken place. And in this book that I have before me here, the Tobago House of Assembly Act, some people are describing it as fatally flawed. They are entitled to their own opinion, but this is a working document. This constitutes a two-part creature, governmental creature, a policy formation, which is considered to be the executive, and a legislative one to back up policy formation. You can't make policy without the force of law. But what has happened, I have discussed it with some in the assembly, and I've pointed out the fact that they have dropped the ball. The ball has been dropped since 1996, because that part of the act, the legislative part of the act, has not been utilized. And because there is that gap, you are finding that the government in Trinidad, the colonial government, is coming in. But it's only coming in because we don't really know our rights, and those we have entrusted with the responsibility of executing government and defending us haven't really done the job that they're required to do. So that there should have never been, truth be told, an application to the ministry. Because in the law here, and we will always quote the law guides us here, the fifth schedule is complete.
So in other words, we should not have to apply for permits, licenses to mine in Tobago?
Not at all. Not at all. We should not be applying to the ministry. Because you see, and Dr. Rowley confessed, he said the only territory, the only part of the country, as he called it, that he cannot intervene and he has no power is in the matters of the Tobago House of Assembly.
But yet they still are intervening.
They still are. So his transport officers violated his own interpretation of the law, and it is a fact.
So now, I mean, as it relates directly to Study Park,
yes,
have we ever had any situation in your memory, because you've been along for quite a while and you've very much been involved, but have we had a situation where our permits, licensing, whatever, even though it is flawed in the terms that we have to ask for it from the Ministry of Energy, but have we ever had a situation where we've been subjected to an audit?
No.
And our licensing, etc., was dependent on whether or not we should pay royalties.
It's an ongoing operation. It has not caused any accident. There has never been any accident, no incident up there. It's an ongoing operation. Your license does not have to be suspended, you follow what I'm saying, before a new one is granted. Law doesn't function that way. The law was made for man and not man for the law. So if the operation shut down, the economy, the life has been shut down. Law was not intended for Tobagonians. to shut down life. Law is not intended to do that. Life is bigger than law. The law must serve life and not life the law. So that those who are making those pronouncements and so-called decisions, they are wrong. But one would suspect, and correctly so, that there is a kind of tit for tat going on and so on. There's the fact that you belong to one side or one party and the other one belong to another party, and that is in itself is disagreeable. But when you come to public office, you can't function that way. And there needs to be statesmanship operating here at the level, because they are called to be statesmen, to serve the greater good. There has never been any incident up there. But we have to understand that, and the government must play a role in that, in educating themselves and the public concerning the constitutional relationship between the government of Trinidad, and I'm calling it Trinidad because that's what it is. It is named Trinidad and Tobago. It's a Trinidad government. And the government of Tobago, the peoples of Tobago and the peoples of Trinidad, there has to be greater understanding and maturity towards the greater good. The laws were passed in the parliament, and it gave the Tobagonians, through the institution called the Tobago House of Assembly, the right to carry out these matters which are constituted as the internal self-government of Tobago, which is a universal right. It is a right. So the colonial power can't encroach upon that. For every aspect here in this fifth schedule ought to be headquartered right here in Tobago. Begin here and finish here. And there is no law that came in before or after can circumvent the right of the people. There is none. The failure is, and it's a real failure that we have to understand, Kandace, is that from 1996, since the coming into force of this, to now, we have not done the work as a people. And from the onset, if you may permit me here, from the onset, I was saying it, but people not listening. And all right, you swear in an executive without a legal secretary. How on earth, fellow Tobagonians, are you going to operate a government without a legal secretary or a legal minister? It just can't work. You have to have a legal secretary with a legal department.
So you mean you should have a division devoted to
legal
judiciary,
affairs,
something similar to the Attorney General?
Yes.
Is that what you're trying to say?
Of course.
Okay.
Not necessarily the judiciary.
Okay.
Because there's no judiciary constituted in the act. But we have a right to it. The matters in the fifth schedule are just battles that we have won. But all right for the Tobagonian to the Tobagonian belongs to Tobago.
No, of course, that is something that cannot be changed right now. That's something that's missing. And, there's been lots of talk in the numerous consultations in regards to self-governance quest. But going back to this matter of SPEL, and especially like what the Minister of Energy and Energy Industry said, because, and he is basically saying that because, the study Park Quarry is operating on state lands, the government has a right to see what's going on and determine if royalties should be paid. Now, I want you to Anna, give your view on this.
Of course. As I said earlier, what's happening there? He's not speaking from a position. Well, I don't know if it's him, because I read that letter several times, and the letter was not written by the minister. It's somebody within the ministry there with technical knowledge. Apparently, they had good advice, and they crafted the letter very smartly. They're playing politics, and they crafted that letter very, very smartly. They left out certain information conveniently and all of that. But we have to understand that in Trinidad, there's this hangover feeling that they're in charge of all of Trinidad and Tobago. And you can understand, there's a scripture that says that when an unclean spirit is casted out from the body of a man, if that person leaves the place there empty, garnished, and so on, he didn't fill himself now with his own legitimate spirit, the spirit of God, then that unclean spirit has that tendency to come back in. And when it comes back in, when it is coming back, it said, bring 7 other spirits stronger than him. And then the last estate of that man is worse than the first. And Tobagoans need to be very, very careful about that instruction. Right? So that we have Dr. Rowley as the head of the government in Trinidad needs to lead a public education program to educate people, because the citizens, they're operating on an old instinct that they are in charge. They are not in charge. The 5th schedule says plainly, you see, internal self-government is not new to Trinidad and Tobago. It's not new to Tobago. It has a historical meaning, and the context is colonialism. So that Trinidad and Tobago had internal self-government. Right? When Williams was chief minister or premier before he became prime minister, and Capildio before him. Okay? That's the end of the period of the British governors. So Solomon Hochoy and all these people. The government now became local, headed by local people. That period is described as internal self-government. And it happened in all the territories. You didn't hear Britain saying, well, we are in charge. They couldn't say that. And I'm saying that so that internal self-government has a legal and historical meaning. It was passed in the House in 1977 in March. You can't make a law now or have an idea or thinking that circumvent that. You follow what I'm saying? So they are wrong. But you see, in Tobago here, we have a tendency and a habit now to blame Trinidad.
Now, I mean, I also want to touch on whether or not the Division of Infrastructure was also wrong in the way they handled the situation. Were there any mistakes that they made?
Well, I don't know that they made any mistake, except that, as I said, there should not have been any application. But what happened to, like the other assemblies before, they suffered, and Tobagoans are suffering from a mindset. Because it's 134 years now, we have been habitually going to Trinidad for everything. You will be surprised to see the amount of trivial small things that the assembly, that operators, functionaries within the House of Assembly are going to Trinidad for approval. You will be shocked. Approvals for $3,000, $2,000 is a mindset. I wrote a letter back in 2000 to Basil Pandey, who was the prime minister, and I copied it to A.N.R. Robinson, who was the president, and the opposition leader, Patrick Manning. And that letter I said, I was calling for constitutional reform. And clearly, this is what is needed here. Too many stumblings going on here. We need a clear-cut constitutional reform here. Right? And I said that Tobagoans are suffering from a state of psychological removedness. And Tobagoans are suffering from a state of psychological external dependence.
Now, does this situation, is there any, is this kind of situation, what does this situation signal?
Yes. What does it signal?
Yes, what does it signal?
All right.
And what should Tobagonians take away from this whole situation?
And this is why I said there are lessons to be learned. Yeah. You can't run government without institutions. You can't get government. You can't be free, sorry. You are not free until you are institutionally free. You're institutionally independent. In order for us to be free, we have to have our own institution. Right? And I'm the secretary for infrastructure. He's a sensible guy. He knows the history and so on. And I'm sure he has learned the lesson from this. And what he will do, I'm sure he will, is to build out within his division a licensing authority. He has to do that. He has to also build out a blasting permit.
And there's power to do that.
Of course.
So the central government cannot challenge it if he decides to go in that direction.
Well, the colonial government, you call it central. I think the motion passed in 77 for internal self-government defines the government as colonial. Because, you see, to pass a self-government motion, it means that colonialism existed and exists. You follow what I'm saying? And so that for me, the correct terminology It's colonial.
But can they?
They can't.
They can't challenge it.
No,
There's no legal grounds for them to challenge it.
No legal ground. The Prime Minister himself said so. He said the only place that he can't intervene in, and we have to understand that, the police have to understand that, the army, every element of the society must understand. And I'm saying it is past. We are arguing an old case. This matter was solved already and won by A&R Robinson. When the Parliament decided, it's not him. He moved the motion, he proposed the motion, he read it out, and the Parliament, led by Eric Williams, agreed.
Now,
That,
should the THA take legal action in this matter, seeing as how they have, as you explained?
Well, there's no need for any legal action on the part of the THA.
So do you think that they should just continue the operations?
Of course.
Without the permits and so on?
That talk about permit is according to what the Ministry of Energy has determined for themselves. And it seems happened to. And this is where they are more advanced than Tobago, because they understand they have been involved in government for so long. So what they have done is to build an institution. It's a local institution right within the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries. That's what they have done. They set up a licensing authority. It really means to approval. You can call it an approval committee. What we call in license is really an approval committee. So they have quarry operations in Trinidad, and within their office, they set up an approval committee. That's all they have done. And they have also set up a blasting advisory committee. It's all there in the letter. And this is the importance of understanding government and understanding freedom. You can't do it without building institutions. I used to learn with Dr. Winston Murray, and I really learned a lot from him. And it takes a while before ideas could really properly soak in and capture you. And so at the young age, in my 30s, I was with him, and he told me, he said, James, we have to build institutions. I heard it. I didn't quite grasp what he was saying. But as I advance in years, I understand what he was saying. You have to build, Tobagonians have to build institutions so that the citizenry that we can feed. If you need electricity, you have to have a tea and deck. It's not any old thing, that's anarchy. And what the law has also done, they have created an institution called the Electrical Inspectorate, an independent body, so that they must inspect it first and give the approval before you can go to tea and deck. It's all about building institutions. You want telecommunications, there's a TSTT. You know what I'm saying? You want water, it is organized, there's WASA. We have to build. And what the secretaries have to do in every division, they must look at all the operations and see where they can build their institutions, what institutions are necessary. And the whole idea is to stop going to Trinidad. We have fallen in love now in that sick way of going to Trinidad. There's no need for any legal action. And one of the things is Malcolm X that says, don't carry your case to the criminal. Because if you understand, government in Trinidad is a three-part creature: executive, legislative, and judicial. You're carrying your case you're carrying a case to court. You're really carrying a case to the criminal. And you saw it in that period between 2012 to 2015, when the London administration, concerning the reforestation matter, you might remember that, London took the government to court on solid grounds, and the judge in Trinidad ruled against him for a matter within the fiscal. Our business, it doesn't concern them at all, period. And they set up their own thing to deal with that in Tobago. Well, I'm saying if that's the case, we might as well close down the Tobago House of Assembly, close down all aspirations of that, accept our status as bastard Trinidadians, because that's what we be now, because we don't have no Tobagonian aspiration. We're not really a people that really exist. We came down from Africa and we were lost in history. So forget about it. We are all now Trinidadians. But if we are mindful of our own true status and identity, then we must build our institutions and move. They say,
yes,
though he who moves will notice the change, but he doesn't move. He will not notice if there are any change.
And I think that's a good point to end our
Have we come to
conversation.
an end there?
Yes, we've come to the end.
I thought Mr. Parks would have given me the whole program this morning. There's so much more to say.
There's so much more to say, but I mean, you made a point very clear in terms of, this whole situation. There is no room for central government to intervene. And I know you have another name for central government, but I'm going to leave it right there.
Yeah, no problem.
But it's something, of course, that we need to pay attention to because, like I said, I mean, this is the first time we've heard of such an intervention where the study Park Quarry is concerned at a time when we are trying to get that back up the ground. It started in 2017 just to be invigorized again, and now we have this situation developing. So it's interesting to see where this would go.
It's petty politics.
Petty politics. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. James.
And thank you.
And viewers, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we'll be speaking to Mr. Ricardo Alfred from from TADCO as we talk about what's happening with the capital of Paradise. See you then.
60,000 people strong.